This is David Mould. I'm reading from my book Postcards from Stanland, Journeys in Central Asia. This excerpt is entitled From Southern Kyrgyzstan to Suburban Maryland. On Christmas Eve 1995, my wife Stephanie picked me up at Washington's Dulles Airport. I'd been travelling for almost 2 days and was exhausted. After almost a month in Central Asia, I looked forward to returning to the United States. Instead, I experienced for the first time in my life reverse culture shock. We drove past brightly lit suburban malls, crowded with shoppers buying last-minute presents and stocking up on holiday food and alcohol. Billboards and neon signs were already advertising the post-holiday sales. One of the blessings, but also one of the curses of international air travel, is that in the space of a few hours, or in my case about 40 hours, you're transported from one world to another. The place you leave and the place where you arrive differ not only in the predictable ways. The skin colour and features of the people, the landscape, architecture, language, food and money. More fundamentally, the everyday concerns of people are usually completely different. In the suburban malls, people were making standard American consumer choices. What should I buy for your mother? She's so difficult. Which video game do the children want? How large a turkey? Will anyone notice if we serve box Chardonnay? It was a stark contrast to the world I had just left. In suburban Maryland, the shops were open and open late. In Osh, the largest city in southern Kyrgyzstan, where I'd spent most of the past month, almost all the shops were closed and had been closed for several years. What was left of the retail economy had moved to the bazaar and street corners. In suburban Maryland, lights blazed from malls, street lamps, and Christmas house and lawn displays. In Osh, the lights were off for at least several hours each day. No one was sure why there were power outages in a country with enough hydroelectric capacity to be a net exporter, but the usual culprits were named: corrupt government ministers, incompetent local officials, the mafia, the International Monetary Fund, or some cabal of all of the above. In suburban Maryland, the restaurants were crowded. In Osh, the few restaurants that were still open had only the occasional customer, and most of the items on the menu were not available. In suburban Maryland, people were spending their Christmas bonuses and maxing out their credit cards. In Osh, teachers, civil service workers, and others who had not been paid for months were wondering when or if they would ever get a paycheck again. In suburban Maryland, people were buying gifts for the holidays. In Osh, some people were selling all they had to buy food. In sub-zero temperatures, they squatted on the broken concrete sidewalks, their possessions, kitchen utensils, auto parts, school textbooks, old clothes, Soviet memorabilia, spread out on blankets. I don't know who was buying, because most passers-by were just as poor as the sellers. In suburban Maryland and throughout the United States, people were looking forward to the new year with hope. In Osh and throughout Central Asia, people were simply hoping that 1996 would not be as bad as 1995. I'd written emails about what I'd seen to family and friends from Osh University on the only computer I found with a dial-up connection. Remember dial-up? It was slow in the US, but even slower on the antiquated Soviet landline system. Each message took almost 30 minutes and a lot of electronic whirring to send. I described the city and the struggles its people faced 4 years after the fall of the Soviet Union. After years of media coverage of famine and conflict, the problems of the developing world can seem relentlessly wearying. Poverty, suffering and conflict are comfortably encapsulated in 5-paragraph or 90-second narrative chunks with the requisite quotes or sound bites. You could not understand southern Kyrgyzstan in 1995 from the occasional media coverage or even from my photos and stories. You simply had to be there. I was there, and then I left. That was perhaps what disturbed me most. I had the freedom to travel, to move between the worlds of southern Kyrgyzstan and suburban Maryland. Most people in Central Asia were simply stuck, trying to survive. That Christmas Eve made me see my own world, career, and life in a new way. My first experience working in a developing country made a deep impression. Over the next 20 years, I returned frequently to Central Asia, to Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, for teaching and research. As I travelled and met people, I knew that what I was seeing and learning would change, so I kept a journal and sent more email letters home. There's big picture stuff about politics and media, but mostly I wrote about the everyday challenges of living, shopping, travel, working, and trying to keep warm, about speaking bad Russian or figuring out how to pay a utility bill. Postcards from Stanland, Journeys in Central Asia by David Mould, is published by the Ohio University Press, Ohio Swallow, that's one word, .com, and available from independent bookstores, Amazon, and other online booksellers.